All right, so we're diving deep into a world where friction basically gets left in the dust.
Yeah.
We got a whole stack of documents here about LIRO and this magnetic levitation transport system, right?
Right.
And the guy behind it all, Marius Oprea.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, the potential of this thing, it's mind-blowing. But we're here to, cut through the hype, separate fact from fiction, see if this LIRO thing really lives up to the hype.
See, what's really interesting about Aure is his background. He's coming from the IT world, right? So you wouldn't think he'd be shaking things up in transportation.
Yeah.
But the guy's a systems thinker, you know? He's all about efficiency, always looking for a better way.
Totally. He got his start, optimizing fuel monitoring systems, even developed some wild tech for pulling oil out of the ground.
Yeah.
But LIRO, this frictionless transport thing, now that's a whole other ballgame. It's like he looked at every pump, every motor, every conveyor belt out there and said, nah, we can do way better.
And he might be right. And because all those systems, as essential as they are, they gobble up energy like crazy.
Oh,
and all that friction, it takes its toll, wear and tear, things breaking down, maintenance costs through the roof.
Yeah, not to mention, what about the environmental impact, right? I mean, all that wasted energy, it's got to come from somewhere.
Right.
But before we go full on eco-warrior here, break down this whole LIRO thing for me. I mean, magnets, replacing engines, how's that even work?
Well, it's surprisingly simple, actually. Elegant, even. Imagine, a rotating shaft, right?
Yeah.
But it's fitted with magnets.
Right.
And not just randomly placed, but in a very specific arrangement. And this creates a moving magnetic field. And that field is what propels a platform along a track. No contact, zero friction.
So, like those maglev trains, but instead of levitating a whole train, we're talking about potentially moving anything. Oil, microchips, you name it.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Since Oprea uses permanent magnets, you don't need a constant power supply to generate those magnetic fields.
Wow.
Think about the energy savings there.
Yeah.
I mean, Oprea, he's done the math, and in some applications, he estimates LIRO could be 80% more efficient than conventional pumps.
80%. Okay, now I see why the bigwigs in the oil industry might be getting a little interested. But hold on, let's back up for a sec. You mentioned Oprea had already dipped his toes in the oil industry, right, with that AJO system?
Oh, right, the heavy oil operating system.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was already thinking outside the box there. Instead of those clunky traditional pumps, he was using a special textile belt to lift heavy oil.
Really?
Yeah, innovative, but it still had its limits.
I see.
But Oprea, being the IT whiz he is, he used his skills to really optimize hosts, added remote monitoring, data analysis, basically gave it a brain.
Yeah, so he was already laying the groundwork for, maximum efficiency, minimal waste, in an industry that's notorious for being, well, not so environmentally friendly.
Exactly.
Okay, back to LIRO, though. Oil rigs, I get it. But the documents mention something about elevators. Is he planning to make buildings frictionless, too?
He might just shake things up, yeah.
Yeah.
Because think about it. Traditional elevators, they're stuck with cables, counterweights, these big, bulky motors.
Yeah.
With LIRO, you get rid of all that. So potentially you've got smaller footprints, faster speeds, smoother rides. But it's the possibility of horizontal movement that really gets people thinking.
Wait, hold on. Horizontal elevators?
Yeah.
Like a sideways roller coaster inside a skyscraper?
Imagine it. Buildings not limited by up and down anymore.
Wow.
Architects could design structures with, interconnected pods, sprawling horizontal layouts, even buildings that adapt, change shape based on what people need. It could totally revolutionize urban planning.
Okay, now my head's spinning with these futuristic cityscapes. But before we get too carried away, let's talk about a field where, precision is everything. Semiconductor manufacturing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Those clean rooms, they make operating rooms look like total germ factories. So how does LIRO even fit into that world?
Well, we're talking about a single speck of dust. Right? That could completely mess up an entire manufacturing process.
Yeah.
And that's where IRO comes in, because it's completely contactless. You can move those super delicate silicon wafers around without any risk of contamination.
Right.
No lubricants, no moving parts kicking up particles. It's just pure frictionless transport.
So not only could it make the manufacturing process itself more efficient, but we're talking potentially higher yields, more powerful processors. I mean, this could have ripple effects throughout the whole tech industry.
Exactly. And it raises a really important question, is LIRO just this cool piece of tech? Or can it actually, fundamentally reshape industries?
Right.
Take oil and gas, for example. Replacing all that existing infrastructure with LIRO.
Right.
I mean, it'd be a massive undertaking.
Yeah, we're talking about an industry, it's all about these massive corporations,
Mm.
right? Complex supply chains, not to mention the sheer scale of these operations, oil fields, offshore platforms, pipelines stretching across
It's
continents.
like David versus Goliath, right?
Yeah.
But remember, even Goliath, he had his weaknesses.
Right.
The oil and gas industry, they're under a lot of pressure right now. Be more efficient, reduce their impact on the environment, stay ahead of the curve when it comes to energy technology.
Okay, so even if there's pushback from the folks who are, invested in the old ways of doing things, LERO could be the disruption the industry needs.
Yeah.
But let's not forget those futuristic skyscrapers we were talking about, right? I mean, safety regulations for elevators, they're not messing around.
No, absolutely. You're talking about systems carrying tons of weight, sometimes hundreds of feet in the air. LIRO elevators, they need to go through rigorous testing, meet all the safety standards.
Of course.
And then you have to think about public perception, too.
Because no matter how efficient something is, you're not going to get people to step into a magnet-powered box shooting up a skyscraper unless they feel safe.
Exactly. It's like there were those early days of airplanes.
Right.
People needed that reassurance that this newfangled flying machine, it wasn't just going to fall out of the sky.
Exactly.
Building trust. It's
Yeah.
just as important as, the technology itself. But let's say, just for argument's sake, IRO gets over all those hurdles, right?
Yeah.
The technical stuff, the regulations, people's fears.
Yeah.
We still haven't even touched on its potential impact on the developing world.
Right, because so far we've been looking at LIRO through the lens of, developed economies, places with resources to spare, right? Existing infrastructure. But its impact on countries with different needs, different challenges could be totally different.
Just like that saying, one size doesn't fit all. LIRO might be this incredible innovation, but how you implement it,
Right.
it needs to be tailored to each specific context.
So what kind of unique challenges might LIRO face in the developing world? I mean, is it mainly a cost thing, or are there other factors at play?
Cost is definitely a big one, of course.
Yeah.
Implementing LIRO on a large scale, it takes a lot of investment up front. And it's something that a lot of developing nations they might not have the resources for.
Sure.
But it goes beyond just money.
Right.
We're talking about infrastructure, access to skilled labor, even cultural factors. All of that can influence how this technology is adopted and used.
It's about making sure that LIRO doesn't become just another one of those technologies that widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots, right? It's got to empower communities, not leave them further behind.
Exactly. And that's where, Oprea's background, his whole approach to problem solving, that's what gives me hope. He's someone who looks beyond the obvious.
You're saying his ability to connect the dots between these seemingly totally different fields, IT, oil extraction, and now transportation, that might be the key to LIRO benefiting everyone, not just a select few.
It's that systems thinking, seeing the bigger picture. With LIRO, we're not just talking about, like, a better machine.
Right.
We're talking about the potential for a better future.
It's pretty wild when you think about it. We started with magnets spinning on a shaft, and now we're talking about the future of, everything. Cities, industries, how we even think about development around the world.
That's the thing about these really groundbreaking technologies.
Yeah.
They kind of pull back the curtain, make you question what you thought you knew about, everything.
It's like we've been handed a new lens, and suddenly we see the world in a whole new light. Everything's sharper, the possibility, they seem endless.
But with that expanded view comes a responsibility.
Oh, absolutely.
We can't just get caught up in the shiny new toy. We got to think long term. What are the implications of all this? Because with LIRO, it's not just about saving some money or making things a bit more efficient. We're talking about changing the very fabric of our world, how it's built, how it all works.
It's like we're standing at the edge of, uncharted territory. So much potential, but also a lot of unknowns. Makes you wonder, what are we going to build with these new tools?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because technology, it's not inherently good or bad.
Right.
It all depends on us, the choices we make. What we prioritize, LIRO, could lead to a more equitable world, a more sustainable one. Or it could just make existing inequalities even worse. It all comes down to how it's developed, how it's used.
So it's not enough to just be amazed by this whole frictionless transport thing. We've got to really grapple with the nitty-gritty. How's this going to play out in the real world? Who benefits? Who might get left behind?
Exactly. And that means having some tough conversations that go beyond the technical stuff.
Right.
Conversations about ethics, about unintended consequences.
It's like we need to remind ourselves that innovation, it's not the finish line, it's just the starting point. And with LIRO, it feels like we're just starting to grasp just how much potential there is.
And that's what makes this whole thing so exciting.
Yeah.
Because we're not just uncovering the potential of some new technology,
Yeah.
We're uncovering new ways of thinking, new approaches to problems, new questions we hadn't even thought to ask before.
It's like Oprah said in that one interview, the most exciting discoveries are often the ones we haven't even imagined yet.
And that brings us to the heart of it all.
Yeah.
Right? Because beyond all the impressive technology, all the potential for disruption, LIRO, it really speaks to the power of human ingenuity. This constant drive to push boundaries, challenge what we think we know, reshape the world around us.
And that, my friend, is something worth thinking about. So, as we stand at the edge of this frictionless future, what possibilities spark your imagination? What questions are you wrestling with? Because the answers, just like the future, they're still being written.
Until next time.